me up with it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I got hit up as well by a couple of people, but you know what? I haven't done enough DD on Unity, and I don't have the time while I'm on the cruise right now. So I'm gonna when I
Well,
get
I mean,
back
we
this
could talk a
weekend.
little bit. I could talk a little bit about it.
Let's get right into it. First topic. Carlos just texted. He's gonna be a little late today, everybody. So Vitaly, what's going on with Unity? I'll get an article about it, but what's the
Okay,
situation?
so look, I didn't do enough DD to know everything, but I do know they're raising prices for certain tiers. So developers have to pay Unity a certain right to use the software at a certain amount of income that you make. You pay Unity, right? So now they're apparently, once again, I didn't do everything yet, but they're raising the costs where at certain levels you will have to start paying like a fee of down anytime someone downloads it on their your app, basically to use your, like any developer who gets their app downloaded, they'll have to pay for that privilege. But these are bigger developers. I don't know exactly the tiers. Do you have the tiers in front of you?
Yeah, look at the screen. I'm sharing it right now. Should be there.
So take
So
a look. Unity Personal and Unity Plus. Okay.
if you've made more than 200 grand and have at least 200 grand lifetime installs, so 200 grand of revenue and 200 grand installs, and then $1 million or $1 million of lifetime. So essentially they're saying, look, if your app gets XYZ many downloads, regardless of if it makes more money than our thresholds, you have to pay us.
Well,
per
no, and they have
download.
to have $1 million, right? It also
$1 million.
says that.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, I still have to go through this, like I said, but people are hitting me up. My brother even said like he's not bullish on Unity at all. He's bullish on Unreal. But
well,
look,
the news really fucked the stock today. I mean, that's the down 5%. That was pretty bad.
not too bad, honestly. In this market, that's not that bad.
That's true. That's true.
So
it's still up for the month. So
it's still up since we started talking about it, even. So Unity has been holding on. But okay, so let's say this is true and this is not great for all developers. Let's just assume that this is the case. The simple fact is, all of these companies will do similar things. So to think that Unreal will not do something similar, especially when it comes out into the market and it has to show ROIC for investors, is kind of crazy. Obviously, Unity, I am not sure if they're doing the right thing here because I didn't do enough research, but let's put it this way. Unreal right now, which I'm a believer in both, by the way. I think as soon as the other one hits the markets, I have to have both because it's a duopoly. There's only two companies you use to make these like VR experiences in games, right? But so let's say this is true. Let's talk about iOS and Android for a second. Do you know that Fortnite is blocked from both stores? Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
So Epic Games makes Unreal Engine, and they have such a bad relationship with both Google and Apple, like the gatekeepers. So that's not great. So, and when Apple came out and said, who are we partnering with? They're partnering with Unity for the Vision Pro. Even if I don't think the Vision Pro is a super success, eventually Apple will make something like that a success, and their partner is Unity. So there's a lot of great tailwinds, even though this sounds like a headwind for Unity right now with this developer conflict going on. I think this will blow over. I still haven't done all the research, but these kinds of things eventually end up blowing over because, like, you have two players. Unfortunately, you have to know both at the end of the day. AAA titles are done with Unreal, and smaller iOS apps and Android apps are done with Unity for the most part. It's like 70%. It's not even a little bit. It's the majority of them. So I don't think Unity is going anywhere, but is it going to shit the brick for the next couple of months? Yeah, that's very possible.
KRIS, any thoughts on if people should be scared as if they're bullish on the Vision Pro that developers will revolt against Unity, which means the Vision Pro won't have a developer app store?
I'm not sure right now. Like I said, I haven't done DD, but I'm looking at the numbers because I think that's always the crux of how we should invest, right? Like, are the numbers trending in the right direction? And it looks like, yeah, for Unity, they look like they're trending in a very good direction, actually. Like, let me just pull it up real quick.
And now they're going to be gouging. So, I mean, this is what companies do.
Why do you think they're doing this? You think they're just trying to squeeze money? You think they want to do this before they get bigger?
Well, you know what's going on right now. Everybody has to get to profitability as fast as possible. So I don't know if it's the right move to gouge your, especially indie developers, because like I know they said 200,000 installs, and that becomes bigger than just indie. But still, there's a lot of indie developers, small teams that get those kinds of numbers, and they don't want to be paying more money right now. So I understand their point, but to say that they have a choice, that's what I'm wondering on. It's like, do they actually have a choice to just leave and go to Unreal? I guess they can do that, but that makes their lives harder. I mean, are they going to change all their code bases over? Like, this becomes very difficult. It's not just easy to say, oh, I'm leaving. It's not that simple, especially when you develop all of the all of your tools, all of your assets, and you use it, the coding is C#, it's not C++. So there's a lot of things that are happening in Unity. The other thing I want to point out, which a lot of people forget, Unity is like almost its own platform. It's a super app. They have advertising, they have asset store, they have their own AI thing that they're working on in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Unreal doesn't have all of that. Like they're building a lot of it, don't get me wrong, but they don't have like the AI background, the cloud infrastructure that they're building. They're not trying to push as hard into certain aspects. So once again, like I don't think that this is going to be a long-lasting thing. I think Unity is just fine, but in the interim, there's going to be some hits.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the numbers, and like I said, there's a compelling story here. They've been growing their revenues pretty significantly over the last few years. I mean, now they've re-accelerated their revenue growth. Their gross profit is growing. Operating income wise, they're still in the negative, but these are the kinds of things that typically happen. The operating income is kind of stabilizing a little bit here. Pre-tax income, net income is still low. I mean, how much cash do they have on the balance sheet? That's like, they've got a good amount of cash on the balance sheet. Yeah, I'll deep dive into this to see what's actually going on with like the numbers and how they're structuring their thing. Because the biggest I would say draw like, what's the word? Like negative to investing in companies like this is typically around their financials. Like, do they have enough runway where they can survive? And you can see here, cash from operating activities, they're about 75 million. So, I mean, they have a pretty good amount of runway based on the balance sheet that I'm seeing, so it's still, I think this is still a spec play to be 100% honest. But if they have monetization down and they can actually extract value from their developers and they could do it in a profitable way, then why not? It could be a good one. Yeah,
I agree with you, Chris. But a spec play, yes, but it's one of the safer spec plays. And the reason I say that is because let's just go back. There's two players. Okay, if you're going to be developing and spending your time on anything, you're going to use either Unity or Unreal. That's it. Okay, so you have a choice there. It's not like you're going to number 4 bank or number 10 bank and figuring that out to discussing like something like SoFi. There's two players. You got to pick one. And the one I picked right now, because it's in the public markets, is Unity. And the reason is the ecosystem. Once again, I've actually built some apps in Unity. They have the asset store that's built in. They have AI that's coming in terms of using, like, imagine NPCs that actually can articulate and talk to you. That's going to be part of this infrastructure. So as they add more services into Unity, the 20 cents or whatever they're charging more per install, will that matter over the long term? It might not matter. So, but in the interim, while they don't have all these tools fully developed and not coherent enough, it might matter, right? But I don't see anyone stealing their market share in such a short amount of time. And I think Unity would change on a dime if enough people revolted against it. So I know you're talking about the financials and it's great, but just the thesis, the fundamental thesis is that there is nobody else to go to besides Unity and Unreal. It's two players.
Yeah, and I think if you're bullish Apple Vision Pro, and I was hearing a lot of stuff today about in 2025, the developers are actually going to start building the App Store for them. It's going to take a couple of years, but when that explodes, if their official partner is Unity, and a lot of those games are powered by Unity, I mean, like if you're bullish Vision Pro, you should be theoretically bullish for the future of Unity as well.
Also, Meta, by the way, Meta, you can do both, but most people actually develop on Unity as well, and they do have a partnership as well. So there you go. Like, Unity's not going anywhere. Once again, temporary hits. Is it going to $30? I have no idea. Maybe it's going back to $30 or 25. I have no idea. But in my opinion, I'm still looking to DCA Unity, unless I do more due diligence and I find out something totally atrocious. But from everything I've seen just around this, it seems like more people like have their favorites. People who like Unreal say Unity sucks. People who like Unity say Unreal sucks. But honestly, you should just have both. As soon as Unreal hits the market, put it in your portfolio too.
And your average is like 25-ish, 27?
It's around 29.
29? Okay. All right, let's transition to the big headline of the day, CPI. CPI came out over the past 12 months. Inflation in the United States of America has increased 3.7%. If this time, August of 2022, September 2022 is 8.3%. So significantly down from last year, but up month over month from 3.2. most of Wall Street thought it would be 3.6, 3.7. So the S&P was down like slightly. It was even up on this news. So there was nothing really surprising. The interesting thing to me was the index for gasoline was the largest contributor to the monthly increase. In July, it was the index for housing. And if we look at oil prices, which I just found this fascinating today, September 13, 2022, oil was 92 a barrel. Today, it's 91 a barrel. So in a year, nothing has really changed. And that's really due to the Saudis and some of the stuff that they've been dealing with as well. Obviously, Russia, Ukraine. So I want to start off the conversation. Chris, what were your top line thoughts on CPI? Obviously, the regional banks fell today. TFC had a nasty fall, 5%. Kind of where does that play into some of the stocks you saw that went down? What was your raw take on CPI? You're muted.
To be honest, I think it was well, it was, how do I say this? If you were on my Patreon, we spoke about this actually. There was, let me just share the screen real quick. And because a lot of this stuff for CPI, it's nothing that's like super like rare that you couldn't find. Like right here, September usually is a bad month for the market anyway. But if you look at the crude oil production right here for both Russia and Saudi Arabia, they've been going down, and down, right? So this is the Russians up here, and this is the Saudis right here. So you can see the total inventory is going, the total inventory production is going down. The good thing is the U.S. is actually pumping the shit out of oil right now, which means that whatever rise we're seeing could eventually take a what's the word, like a flatlining, because the US tends to, just really do a good job in terms of production. Our WTI, the way that like oil production in the US works is that WTI is especially with the frackers, can be ramped up. The production can be ramped up relatively quickly. So right now, because the prices are so high, I'm sure that there's a lot of wildcatters out there that are just rushing to go into all the wells that they have and start drilling as much as they want. Because I mean, you're getting a ton of money on their spread, and a lot of these companies have gotten their break even to a point where they can make money at 30, at 40, and at $50 a barrel without any issue. So at $88 and at $90 a barrel, like they're incentivized like crazy to produce. So there actually may be some entry plays in all of this. And as for the regional banks, let me just show you guys something really quickly, because I covered this a little bit too, but regional banks are more sorry.
All right, you did a whole post on this. I forgot. Yeah.
This
is all the juice you guys are getting if you're not in Chris's Patreon. The link is in the bio. There's
So I posted this. I posted this about 4 days ago, and basically this kind of mirrors a very similar thing to what we saw in 2008, 9, and 10 when we saw the post great financial crisis, but it's happening in a little bit more of an accelerated way. So what I posted here was the KRE, which is the regional banking index. Basically, you can see after the great financial crisis, we had a huge mark down, and then you could see that there was some volatility. But for the most part, because of the regulatory overhang with people saying, oh, who do we blame? Do we blame this bank? Do we blame that bank? Do we blame the regulators? Between all of that, you saw all this market volatility between when the great financial crisis technically ended and when the new bull market started. So you can see here, once all the legislative issues stopped and everyone was kind of like back into normal mode, and the regional banks, and especially even the major banks, were back to operating like they were normal, you saw almost 100% rise in the next couple of years, right? So this is the kind of thing that we're dealing with right now, which is pretty much a combination of headline risk with regional banks trying to figure out who to blame for SVB and FRC's collapse, a combination of CPI, because at a lot of these banks had issued loans at much lower rates. So the longer the interest rates remain higher, the more the book values are going to stay below what they're supposed to be, even though they're trading at way below book value right now too. So it's just one of those things that their fair market value of the assets that they have are kind of challenged right now. So if you go to the SEC and you look at their financials, it'll actually show you that they have $20 billion or $40 billion of unrealized losses, but those are all just paper losses based on a higher rate of interest. Now, the thing is, when interest rates come down, those paper losses get wiped away and you actually get an asset again, right? So this is where the bullishness for me when it comes to KRE and regional banks in general comes in. The question is, when do we see this turnaround in rates? We're not
so you thought
seeing
today's CPI is signaling to investors that we're not getting that turnaround soon, which is why they tanked today. Yeah,
absolutely.
So I wasn't paying attention to regional banks. I'm sorry. I'm no longer in TFC. So what? Amit, how do you feel, first of all?
No, it's fine, bro. Like I've been
step one, admit the anger.
No, there's zero anger.
Hold on, Chris. I'm asking Amit.
Yeah. All right, go ahead.
No, seriously. I know a lot of people think I just blindly follow Chris, but I texted Chris 2 days ago with DD around TFC. Like, I understand this company a lot better than people give them credit for. I feel perfectly fine about them. I mean, people have to remember they're the 6th largest bank in America.
Why did they go down again? I actually don't know. I'm asking.
So they have a shit ton of paper losses. All the regional banks do, because interest rates are high. So if you mark to market the loans that they have on the balance sheets, they're all down, like negative tens of billions of dollars. As soon as interest rates go down, those paper losses turn into assets, because then when you mark to market, they're fine.
Right. They don't have to sell anything.
They don't have to sell shit. And Truist has a great insurance business that they're selling off at a massive premium that's keeping them afloat in terms of
they only sold 20%.
Keeping them afloat? Wait.
No, they're only
it's one of the bull cases for investors, because if shit really does hit the fan, they're able to still financially engineer earnings. But Chris can talk more about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. They only sold about 20% of their insurance business. They have the other 80% still there. It's generating them a ton of cash flow. Their non-interest income is still there. You know, their dividend is high, and they're able to maintain that dividend. So TFC in the long run will be fine. You'll be able to enjoy some really good dividends if you're owning the stock. The bigger, even right now, when it came to the spreads that we spoke about earlier, what is that thing called? Earlier in May, we got such a great price that even right now, with all this stuff that happened, they're still kind of like flatlined for AMIT. Like AMIT, I'm pretty sure they're not like down a lot. They're at the same, almost the same point. So that's the key when it comes to like investing.
I mean, I was up 4,000 yesterday. I'm down 1,000 today. You know what I mean? But if I got the spreads a couple of days later than when I bought them, I would be down a lot. But we just bought them at the bottom. You know?
Something like this is like, I know we didn't talk about the 2026s, but I am looking what to roll over into 2026 in terms of, because I have calls on Enphase. So someone's asking, are you buying Enphase? Yeah, I have plenty of Enphase. Don't worry about me and Enphase.
How many Enphase shares do you have, by the way?
I have enough, dude. Don't worry. When Enphase does what it's supposed to do, you might get a Tesla. Okay, that's how it'll work.
Really? It's that many shares? Holy shit.
You might get. He gets a Tesla. This guy gets a Tesla.
The thing I missed out on when we were at Cheesecake Factory, I asked you a bunch of questions and you were giving me everything. I didn't ask you the Enphase question. I didn't ask you how many Enphase shares do you have. I forgot about it that day.
But hold on. But in either case, I think rolling over some things that make sense for the longer term is TFC. One of those things that makes sense more in 2026 to make sure when the rates are down to just prolong that call option. I don't know if Chris can speak to that, but that's something I'm looking at even for Enphase, because who knows, 2 years of down rates would still affect Enphase and Tesla, obviously, but they're not going to go where we want. So the calls might not explode like we want.
I'll let Chris answer this real quick, but you have a ton of cash secured puts on Enphase that expire in 2025.
And I might roll those too.
Are you afraid those get called, or like at 130?
I have good prices. I have good prices on those. So it has to go and stay at 120 till 2025, unless some idiot decides to do it earlier, of course. That's always possible. So they're between 100 and 130 bucks in that range, which we are right now. But you don't think it's going to
be 130 by 2025?
I really doubt it. But the thing is, I'm also looking at 2026 is where I can just push it off another year if I want to. So that's the beauty of like leaps, by the way. So you're almost, I don't want to say there is some gambling to it, but you're also partially an investor because you're moving the goalpost so far out, right? Mm-hmm. So now the goalpost for me is in 2025, and soon if it's in 2026, then my calls or my cash secured puts would be in that bracket. And I'm even thinking like I want more shares at a certain point, but look, I bought a lot, so I want more shares, but I don't want to be buying thousands of shares, obviously, right now. Like, who knows if it goes down to 100? I don't know. I don't know that answer. So I'd rather just DCA into that kind of stuff and push the puts out And I think TJ the Wheel Deal might be very proud of me if I do that.
Chris, go
But
ahead.
yeah,
No, I mean, I've been really like doing a lot of research on the 2026 calls because they just came out. The only thing is that the volume is not necessarily there to justify any real big purchases. Like if you look at the bid and ask spread, whenever you enter into an options play, even a stock price, right? If it's not a very if it's a very thinly traded stock or a very thinly traded contract, what ends up happening is the distance between the bid and the ask can vary significantly. And especially with a company that's not as well known, it could go even further. So the spread can be so wide that, this is why, and this is one of the greatest teaching things I could tell you. Learn how to do limit orders. Don't do market orders. Like when you do a market order, it will execute at a price that basically it will just be at the asking. And I know that some people, the only time that I ever use a market order, to be fair, 100%, is if I'm really, really bearish on a position. I just want to get the fuck out. I don't care about what price it's executing at. I'll do a market order. But for the most part, I try to time it so I get the best executed price. So what you do is you do a limit order. So if you see the bid and ask, let's say the bid is $1 and the ask is $2, you want to try to be like at 150. You can go a little bit higher to like the 165. You can go a little bit on the other side to do 145, but you never pay what they're asking for. It's almost like going to a car dealership. When you go to a car dealership and the guy says to you 25,000, you never say, yeah, okay, 25, here you go, here's the money, let me buy a car. You usually say, hey, let me get for 20,000. The guy will come back and say, hey, we're about 20,000.
If you're Guju or Indian, you say, I will pay you $3,000 and that's it. Okay, fuck this 25,000.
So
then you start the negotiation. Then you go.
Yeah. I'm looking at. I don't know if I should just share this here.
Yeah, go ahead, share the screen.
Okay, this is just the options calculator. You guys see it?
Yeah.
For 2026, let me see. Yep, January 16, 2026. We have, I'm just looking. Okay, so let's say you want to buy
end phase or TFC.
This is end phase. TFC. I'm not looking at that.
I thought you cared about me, Dad.
That's funny. So end phase 150, and it's not that terrible. I don't know. Yeah, there's a couple of bucks, but end phase always trades kind of rich. So I don't know, Chris, how much closer it's going to get. Here the call side. I'm sorry. Here's the call side. 36 to 38. Well, 30, almost 37 to 38. So like $1.50 in spread. I don't know if that's terrible, honestly. You're saying
that's not terrible.
Closer?
That's not terrible at all. That's actually not terrible at all. I'm surprised to see those numbers that are like that, actually, because usually it's way more distance between the two. But
I wonder if it's because this trades more. Obviously, the options for end phase, it's a bigger company. It trades more, so that could be the issue. You're talking about maybe smaller cap stocks, which
well, not necessarily, because I mean, it just depends on the volume, right? Like SoFi is like one of the most traded companies on the planet, yet it's only what, a $4 billion valuation versus a company that's.
Take a look at the spreads of that, or I could bring that up.
Yeah, bring that up. So SoFi, because there's so much liquidity, it's like that. Liquidity is much higher in the December 2025s. Yeah, that's the other thing too, Garcia. That's a good point. It's only a month away. Like the 2026s are so brand new versus the December. So it might actually make more sense to buy the December 2025s if they're available, because they're not available on every single thing. Is this SoFi?
Yeah, it's not terrible. I don't know. 217, 222, 279.
Oh, yeah, these aren't that bad. I'm looking at a Robinhood right now.
Here, $10. I mean, honestly, look at this, $10. I know. Look, I don't want people to gamble, but if you're only paying $3.30 and you're assuming SoFi is going to be successful by 2026, this is not a terrible bet.
Yeah, that's not
13
is the break even, right? Now, I have a quick question on this. So 330 plus 10 means 1330 is the break even. However, investors can still profit on the selling of the options contract, even if it doesn't get to 1330.
Yeah, because when you sell the contract, you're selling the contract to somebody else.
Right. So the break even is about actual shares if you're exercising the contract.
Yeah.
Right?
But if like right now you're buying that contract at $3.30, but let's say it starts to run up and you're also compressing the time frame. A year from now, that's not a 2-year leap. It's a 1-year contract. So that premium is going to be higher for that person. And so they might pay you $6.
Got it.
So you're selling the contract to somebody else. Someone has to hold that contract to expiration. And
Right.
most contract, I think 80% of the options contract is expire worthless, but they can trade hands a bunch of times before then. And that's where you're making your money.
Yeah. I'm glad that Garcia brought this up. He said you can time your exit around 6 months to expiry.
I've
I
heard
like
this
that.
is the case. Is this
Yeah,
the right
yeah.
timeline? Is Garcia right on this?
Yes. Main reason why is because what tends to happen is if you look at how the options work, the
I
something
see a
called
woman
theta
on your bed
decay.
back there.
I see a woman too.
That's
I
my
see
that's
her.
my wife.
Is
That's
there,
my
is
wife.
there, you busy?
That's
You
my
gotta go,
wife.
bro?
The
That's
wife's
my
at the
wife.
Like
restaurant.
rubbing,
She's got
just like-
somebody.
It's
doing
a
this thing
small
with her
cruise
leg.
ship. It's a small cruise ship. It's my wife. So basically, what happens is
It's
the
it's
last
2 wives tonight.
You gotta tell her to put some clothes on, though. Looks like she.
the last 30.
I'm gonna
to,
zoom into that mirror behind him. Hold on.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
the last 30 to 60, like the last 60 to 30 days, you have a precipitous drop in the value of that options contract. And that's something called theta decay. So let me just bring up the chart. So a lot of times what you want to do is you want to sell before the contract, especially if it's something like a call and you don't plan on actually executing it. It's good to sell it and just take the profit on it. So let me just share 1 second. Share the screen.
Yeah, and what I was reading is 6 times 30 is about 180 days before it expires. That's when theta decay really takes effect.
Yeah.
Well, just
I mean,
go right now. Like if you
Yeah.
just go right now and look at say you wanted to buy options on Robinhood, look at leap contracts and then compare what the same strike price would cost you if you only bought them 6 months out, and you'll see it's probably double the premium. That's how you know that it's that sweet spot. Yeah, the chart Chris is showing. There's a sweet spot of having enough time left where it's still worth buying the contract for the time, and not enough time having passed that the theta decay doesn't give you up.
And this is the thing that guys like TJ the Wheel Deal use to their advantage, because they're selling covered calls with less than 30 days left and sometimes 60 days left on that contract. So basically, if the price of that options contract doesn't get to where it needs to go, the options contract decays away and they end up making a profit, right? So that's they make the money on the premium that they have. So it's one of those things.
And Stuff to Watch says options trading, this never ends well. We should give the caveat that yes, it can end very poorly for everybody who's listening. So don't do it. And if you do it, it's a tiny little portion of the portfolio. Like, to be honest, most of my Enphase shares are in shares. It's not options. That's only a very little bit.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's absolutely like the case. I try not to let more than 10 to 20% of my portfolio ever become options, because a lot of times your company could be great, you're amazing, the business can be doing amazing, but black swan event can come and destroy your options position. With the stock, you can just hold it until it recovers. Like, think about all the people that had Meta stock. Meta was great buy, everyone was loving it at 300. Boom, we had that giant crash, that shit went down all the way. And then if you had been holding, let's say, options during that time and the expiration was coming up, you would have gotten destroyed and you had no chance of recovery. Whereas at least with the stock, like, hey, the company can do whatever it needs to get back to a position of profitability. So you always want to limit your exposure to options to only what you can theoretically just 100% lose without having any issues. And also sometimes the hardest part with options is to control your own greed centers, right? Which is once you're up, when you see the fucking total return, you just feel like a schmuck for holding the stock instead of holding options. But then again, it's also like, hey, they could disappear on you at the same time.
No, I sleep at night much better with shares. With the options, I have to worry. Like Amit pointed out. Well, so you have puts, so I'm gonna have to buy some of these contracts possibly. I don't like worrying about that kind of stuff. That's why I keep it a small minority, because imagine worrying you have to buy thousands and thousands of shares. Like, that sounds crazy. Like, I don't want to be in that position. I'd rather just hold the shares and not worry about most of that.
Jeremy had a great post about that a while ago, where he was posting about how before he started really buying heavily in shares, he was heavily invested in options, and the stock market became not fun for him. He was increasingly just concerned about having to worry about the short-term movements of the stock price versus the fundamentals of the company. And so it can be addicting, especially if you get one or two of them right your first time, where you start thinking, why would I ever buy shares? I'm just going to buy options contracts. But like KRIS and VITALY are saying, then you get a pandemic. The people that were holding options during the pandemic, everyone got flushed out. But the people that had the shares, if you just held and held, we've pretty much recovered. So
That's why we as big brothers are like to AMIT, like, hey, listen, you made money, sell. Remember that? See,
And that's
now
why he's all in options, because
Right.
he listens.
No, he's not all in options, man. But he
95%, man. What are you talking
No,
about?
it's not
He's
95%. Where did you get 95% from?
All right.
It's like
So-
55%.
55.
So I wanted. I didn't want to interrupt when you guys were talking, but I did want to revisit something from yesterday, and then actually have a question for you, Aman. Why don't we do this? The question first. So
Wait, could I get these super chats first out of the way?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, sure.
do that.
$59. Yo, this guy. Who is this guy?
I don't know who the fuck this guy is. So first of all, Mando Menick, thank you for the $10 super chat. Appreciate that. All right, David, we got 3 in a row. Word on the street that the reason is Carlos is late is because he's buying me a fully loaded Lamborghini. Please make sure he gets silver exterior color. Thanks, buddies.
Bro, I would buy you a Roadster before a Lamborghini, but yeah,
For $13.99, you get one of those little ones.
if you want the silver,
If you keep
exterior,
super
that's-
chatting, you're gonna fund your own Lamborghini. Dave.
basically,
That's-
seriously, yeah.
Okay, then there's 2 posts that are $90 fucking when you add them up,
Jesus.
telling me to sing.
I'm
So-
saying I don't give a shit. You better sing,
Right,
bro.
sing.
I
You know
guess
that-
I'm
okay,
singing.
bitch.
You know
Sing.
I
the
guess
rhythm.
this is what
You
is
know the rhythm
this is
for
what a
that?
YouTube stripper is like. So 290 people either mute or get ready.
I
Here we
don't
go.
really know this.
But you
got
got to do this in your falsetto. This is total falsetto. I'm in love,
3.
girl.
Yeah,
in
I was
love,
thinking, imagine
girl.
290 people in front of me. I don't even know
I'm
the
just in
song.
love,
So.
girl. And this
Okay.
is true. You know, I don't want to get us demonetized, but
What's the tune?
no. It's I'm in love, girl.
It's like talking in the beginning.
I'm in love, girl. Yeah.
Bro, I don't know this fucking
And
song.
then you
How
gotta
am I
say,
allowed-
girl,
Girl,
you know it's true. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I love
love
you.
you.
I love you. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
I like karaoke.
I think he sees. I think this guy sees it.
Yo,
as a bunch
we
of
should do
monkeys. He's
karaoke
literally
night,
just like
shouldn't
throwing
we,
money at
in
us, being
Vegas?
like, "Dance, monkey, dance."
Yo, David, if
karaoke
you gave the
Vegas,
Michael
no?
Jackson
Oh yeah,
song,
blame it on the rain. That was another fucking great song.
David,
man.
if you did a all right, David, if you did a Michael Jackson, I promise I would have done it because I know every Michael Jackson, but I don't know these
That's
songs,
true.
bro.
That's true.
I don't know
If you
any
watched
of
our first interview with AMIT ever, you revealed to us that what you wanted to be was Michael Jackson.
That is
That we
correct.
shared that in common. You had to walk around with the glove. You know,
Yeah,
I
I
begged
saw
my
that.
parents for the red jacket with all the zippers.
It wasn't about the
You
little
guys
boys.
remember his morning show? He started wearing the stupid glove for like a
Yeah.
week. You guys remember that?
Yo, I wear the dumbest shit.
I
on my
literally
morning.
bought Palantir because when they broke $10, I think it was. No, when they became gap profitable, like every dog in my neighborhood heard AMIT.
Oh yeah, I was like gap profitability. Gap profitability. That was epic.
It was pretty good.
Thank you,
So-
David. I appreciate that. If you give me Michael Jackson stuff, I'll definitely.
Yeah, seriously, we gotta meet you one day, or just stay anonymous. It's almost like
Yeah, just keep.
just stay. I feel like if
You
I
just
had
sugar
if I had a lamp and I rubbed the lamp, David B would come out of the.
Well, I feel
You
other
have 3
people,
wishes.
other people should compete with David for super chats. So if you want to start a competition,
Yeah,
That's
Dave is
totally
now our
cool.
favorite junkie.
that's right.
Okay, what were your questions, Carlos?
One was a question and one was a comment. And since you're moderating, I'll let you decide which order we do it. One of them was I wanted to get more information on the AI summit that happened today. With I saw like Musk was there, Gates was there, Zuckerberg was there. I saw your boy Palantir.
Carp was sitting with Elon. They
Sitting
were
right
just-
next to Elon.
They were
So
chilling.
I've been looking for the news to see. I don't know if it was a closed door meeting or if it was just sort of a question and answer open to the
It was
public.
closed door. There was no press. And
I wanted to get some information on that. I figured you'd probably know. The second thing was I wanted to revisit our conversation yesterday about Apple's keynote event. I was dead wrong, dude. That event was pretty bullish on Apple. And so if we want to talk about what's happening, what I think Apple's doing with this new phone, I think we can get into that. I've told some people hit me up on Twitter and I told them that I would go into it today. So we got.
I think the Apple discussion is way more interesting. On AI, they just talked about regulations. That's it.
Did they get into any specifics about
No,
like, the
because no press was allowed. Like, you know, how Mark
Well-
Zuckerberg, they asked him questions and shit. We didn't get to see
none of them
If you
posted
want to
afterwards?
play Elon, no, Elon had a whole thing. Do you want to actually play a little bit of it? I think we can play that, right?
Well, you're saying the stuff from him on All In? Because I heard that.
No. He had an actual interview discussing AI safety and how important it is for the humanity's survival and all. He had a whole like 10-minute discussion with the press
Was
afterwards.
Ackman there too?
No, this was just Elon.
I saw what's his name, Sanjar.
Do you want to bring it up if you don't know where?
Yeah,
it
I actually
want to hear
I-
something.
Yeah, let me play 30 seconds of this 3
Oh,
minute clip.
Hoj, was that you that we were talking about the Apple car? Yeah, I'm convinced after that.
Found it?
keynote, they're
is?
coming.
Oh, there
out
it
with
is.
a car.
There you go.
Okay, let's see what he says.
A referee, just as you have a referee in a sports game, or all sports games, and that the
Wait, hold on. Actually, this is hilarious because he's toying with them. I remember watching this in the morning. Just
Look
it
at
was actually
homie
really
in the
funny.
background. That guy looks like the guy from Monopoly.
Yo, why is he there? That's
Who
crazy.
is that guy?
Not only that, pay attention to the guy on the right, his bodyguard. He's like scoping out the place for, you know, sniper.
Yeah, this guy's
Take
$200
somebody
billion
down.
sitting right there. That's
He's gonna come up on the right as soon as this plays.
games are better for it, to ensure that the players obey the rules, play fairly. I think it is important for similar reasons to have a regulator, which you can think of as a referee, to ensure that companies take actions that are safe and in the interest of the general public.
Did you tell them that AI is a double-edged sword?
Yes.
And what did you mean by that? Can you explain that?
Well, what did the metaphor?
Yeah, I mean,
well, if you have a sword with two sides,
when you're
one side can get you, even though you're trying to get something with the other side.
Yo, he's fucking with them. He's
That's
explaining
so
the
big.
metaphor. That's hilarious.
No, but he said that, did he say like if you have a short on both sides? Isn't that what he just said?
No, he's
No,
just saying if you have a
sword,
sword
sword.
on because he
Oh,
said
a
what's a
sword.
double-edged
Got
sword.
it.
And Elon's like, you do not know the metaphor? Do you want me to explain it? So that's why.
telling the senators that, though.
That's how it works.
What do you want them to take away
I
from
think
that?
it's more important to make sure your hilt is also, you have a hilt, not a sharp thing.
Yeah. Fair enough. What do you think how do you think they took the message that you brought to them?
Well, I think it was very civilized discussion, actually, among some of the smartest people in the world. So I thought it was, Senator Schumer
One of the
did
smartest
a
people and Zuck.
great service to humanity here, along with support of the rest of the Senate. And I think I think something good will come of this. I think this meeting may go down in history as being very important for the future of civilization.
Do you think some legislation is going to come out of this?
Probably. I'm not sure what the time frame of that is, but
Sorry, Supreme.
the legislative process is not a swift one.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think things will go in the right direction generally. Senator Schumer or Leader Schumer did ask everyone to raise their hands in the room to see if they were in favor of AI regulation, and I believe almost everyone did.
Yeah.
So that's a good sign.
Do you think any of the tech CEOs left and
What do you say about the tech CEO?
Of course, they raised their hands, man.
Why'd you
All
stop
of them
it?
want regulation.
Yeah, just play the rest of
That's
it.
fine.
I
You
mean,
guys
if
wanna
we're
finish?
if it's demonetized, it's
No, it's not about
already-
demonetized. It's just like I don't know if he's saying anything that important. I mean, we can.
I just want to hear just the end, and I want to see what happens with the Monopoly man if he starts giving out community chest cards to people.
He said, "Did any of the tech
Hold on,
CEOs?"
hold on.
Error in your favor.
I
I
Here's
think the
100.
Monopoly man
I
pulls out a weapon at the end.
I wonder if the CNBC guy, hey, make sure you get the Monopoly guy. That'll make this clip more interesting.
It's
you
so
know.
it's so good. That's such great framing.
They could have just went a little bit this way and not covered the Monopoly guy.
I
but
just
they
love how
didn't
they're
do
actually talking to that guy. Like, who is that guy?
That is true. That's
Yeah.
the mystery. That's interesting.
So that's a good sign.
do you think any of the tech CEOs left and changed their minds?
Man, Elon is
Do you think they
surrounded.
were changed by anything they heard from the Senate side?
Well, I can't read their mind, but judging by the fact that they put their hands up when asked if they believe that some regulation is in order, I think I think it's clear that there's a strong consensus, a woman consensus that there should be some AI regulation, that it would be in the best interest of the people to do so. And I think we'll probably see something happen. I don't know on what time frame or exactly how it will manifest itself.
Yeah, that's
but
the question. What were they going to do?
I don't know. I mean, there's clearly, we've created regulatory agencies before, and actually just recently, just before leaving, made the point that while our regulatory agencies are not perfect, and I deal with regulators on a very frequent basis, with automotive, communications with Starlink, and then FAA with rockets. So I've had tremendous amount of interaction with regulators for a couple decades at least. And while regulators are not perfect, there's no regulatory agency that I'm aware of that I think we should, at the federal level at least, that we should delete.
Yeah. Do you think there should be a department of AI or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know what exactly. Perhaps a department of AI.
So one of the things about regulation, right? While it's interpreted as a way to safeguard the average person against, all sorts of crazy things, regulations also have a way of pretty much solidifying incumbency. So what does that mean? That means that if you make the regulatory burden so onerous, existing people who have large market shares, they can maintain that market share very easily. Anyone new trying to break into the market is going to have a very tough time trying to break into the market, right? So regulations done right provides for an even playing field. Regulations done wrong actually end up creating monopolies.
Well,
And
this
the
is why
good thing,
OpenAI went and stood up and said, "Hey, we need regulation because they're winning right
yeah,
now," and they're like, "Well, this helps us." I think that's the only reason. What is his name? Sam. I forgot the guy's name from OpenAI. Is he on?
Sam
Sam
Altman.
Altman. Yes, that's why he did all that. He's been getting a lot of flack for that too. That he's asking for regulations basically so he has control.
Yeah. Well, it's not
I mean,
just him, but
but that's not.
yeah.
I mean, yes, to a certain extent, you're right, but you have to look at it. Just look at it compared to other regulatory agencies.
Real quick, Carlos, before you go, third day in a row, we hit 300.
Nice.
Okay, continue.
No, just making the point that you do need you do need regulatory guardrails to kind of establish what the rules of engagement are. Otherwise, it's not even just creating monopoly, but weaponizing these systems against each other. Especially with something like AI, it's pretty powerful. You know, I was watching another interview with Elon where he's been getting a lot of slack for what happened with Starlink in Ukraine, not allowing Ukraine to attack Russia. And he's basically saying, like, you have to understand, like, Russia would want to see Starlink essentially be deleted. If we ever had a hack job, they could tell all the satellites to essentially deorbit, and they could essentially destroy the whole thing. Those are the kinds of things that you could use AI for. And so I think it is important to have some conference, to have some sort of regulatory guardrails in place where these companies know what the boundaries are. You have to set you have to set the boundaries of the sandbox, right? And then from inside of that, then you have competition. So I don't think that I don't think it's about, at this point in its infancy, I don't think it's about creating a monopoly, because the buy-in for AI is so damn high already that it's not like you need to create regulation to prevent competition.
Yeah.
Anytime regulation comes in too early, anytime, it limits what actually, the tech that develops. So I actually don't agree regulation should come in right now. But having said that, it should start. So I agree with Elon that we do need safeguards, but you don't want the government controlling this technology. That's also pretty dangerous.
But his point is, we're not talking about we're not arguing over whether we should have seatbelts in cars or not. What he's saying is, if you wait until there's an issue with sometimes you wait until there's a problem with something before you regulate, right? But he's saying specifically with, say, aircraft, you don't want companies cutting corners because there's real lives at risk. And whereas there's a 350, 400 people's lives at risk on an airplane, if you cut some corners, with AI, the potential damage is catastrophic. It's the world. It's civilization. So in that sense, I agree with him. Like, you wouldn't want to not have regulation when people start messing with nuclear technology, for example, right? You'd say we got to get some safeguards in place early, because fucking with this technology, or just the backyard person trying to mess around with nuclear technology, can create a serious consequences. So in that sense,
there's also one thing about regulation that does help in the long run when it comes to certain industries. So if you look at, like, the US, right, we have one of the largest pharmaceutical, businesses, industries in the world. And I'm always seeing all the regulatory onerous activities that are put on these drug manufacturers to, basically make sure that the medicine that they have is actually working in the way that it's supposed to work, and it's not causing damage and everything else. Now, some would say, oh man, this is too regulatorily onerous. Like, it's taking 5, maybe sometimes 10 years to get through the approvals process, where all we're trying to do is help people. But there is a trust that's developed. So when the FDA says, hey, listen, this drug is good to go because we've done all the testing, we've done all the research, other countries actually just follow suit and say, oh, yeah, you know what? We believe the regulators in the US have done such a good job that we don't necessarily need to go that in depth with it. And they just take it. And so American medicine and American companies, like manufacturers and pharmaceutical companies, they do exceptionally well, not just in the US, but outside the US as well. So it just depends on how the regulations can be used. The problem that you run into when it comes to too much regulation is that you end up getting a situation like Boeing and Airbus, right? Where there's only literally, it's a duopoly. Like, imagine right now a third company making an aircraft. I can't even imagine that, because there's so many regulatory requirements on making sure that the planes are safe and everything else.
It's not, but it's not the barrier to entry is not regulation, Chris. It's the amount of capex that you need and the relationships that you need to develop to get those contracts. I mean, anyone, like, we could decide today we want to make airplanes, but I mean,
no. I mean, like,
we would need?
no.
and
No, no,
really
I mean,
get
like,
something like that
okay.
off the ground. It's not a regulation that's preventing us from doing that.
No, no, it is.
It is
regulation.
regulations that is preventing it. Yes.
We
Yeah.
don't have
It-
we don't have
Well,
anywhere near
when the
that.
Wright brothers built the plane, there was no FAA to tell them you can't fly. They just went out and flew. You can't do that
That's a
anymore.
bar. That was a
What?
bar.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'm
That
saying
is to say the whole
regulations
American-
absolutely
But there's
100%
no, but
prevent
there's a
companies from forming.
but there's a difference
100%.
between building an aircraft. Like I can build a small aircraft and I can get a
No,
small
you
pilot's
can't.
license.
In fact,
I
if
can
it's
build
too
it. I
heavy,
can build an aircraft, but I can
you
build a
gotta go
small
back to
little
the
aircraft
FAA.
in my. There's nothing stopping me from building it. But you're talking about building military aircraft. It's not a regulation.
no.
that's
So-
preventing
You
so I'm
can't
talking-
you can't
military
build something
aircraft.
more than 30 grams without going to the FAA.
I'm talking more on the lines of something like look
little
at
drones.
China tried to create their own airplane manufacturer, right? They have an airplane manufacturer that's specifically built for Chinese corporations and everything else. But the FAA is just saying, no, we have to do flight testing. We have to do this testing. We have to do that testing. We're not just going to let you fly in U.S. airspace. And U.S. airspace is the most valuable airspace on the planet. So there you go. If you can't get access to the U.S. market or the European market, your company is dead on arrival. So any airline that's like, oh yeah, you know what, I want to use an aircraft from China, automatically no. Same thing with the automotive industry. The automotive industry, tell me how many Chinese models are sold in the United States? 0, right? Why? Because the regulatory agency said if you want to import Chinese models into the US, they have to meet certain safety like guidelines. They have to do crash testing. They have to do X, Y, and Z before you're even allowed to be in the US market. So these are the kinds of things that
But you
know,
already
they're
have
like
to, you already have to have a vehicle up and running to even get to that point, is what I'm saying. You already have to have done the R&D, the building, the factory, the tooling, the machining, all of it to even have all the research, all the propulsion. You have to have all that work done before you get to the regulatory step. And what I'm saying is the amount of work that it takes to even get to the point where regulation is your problem is just such a high buy-in that unless you have the money, I mean, even look at companies that are in the US like Rivian, they're still bleeding money and they have regulatory clearance and it's still hard for them. So I'm just arguing that regulation is not the actual barrier. It is one of the barriers, but it's the end of the line. Yeah. It's the final boss, you know?
Yeah, it is.
China could do it. China could do it. I mean, if they just got rid of all tariffs, like import tariffs on Chinese cars, they would be here, you know?
Yeah.
You could argue that the tariffs are actually something that prevents competition, right? Because that markup is what it creates the disincentive for people to buy those vehicles, right? Because of the extra cost. So it's why we don't drink, you know, imported beers, that kind of thing.
Okay, let's get to the Apple stuff. So you have a contrarian take, which I like.
Well, not a contrarian take. I just wasn't fully researched. Like again, I'm working in the evening, so I have very little time before that I'm awake before I actually get on the show. But you know, I work in the business, I work in entertainment, and I got to speak to some of my friends yesterday that are in the business, and they were all super excited at some of the announcements yesterday. So I do want to share the screen because.
Okay, so KRIS, VITALY, and I thought the announcements were nonsense. Your argument is the people you're talking to in the industry.
I didn't listen to the whole thing yet, too. So maybe
no,
something I didn't hear.
I agree. I didn't listen to the entire thing.
On the surface,
okay, my opinion is that there was nothing exciting.
I think only your.
You're telling me there is something.
Right? He's like, well, we all think that Apple sucks.
No, bro. There was some pictures on Twitter where you.
I was waiting for the M3. I don't think they announced that.
Okay, well, the consensus among some of the people that I spoke to yesterday are that. Although Apple said that the Vision Pro is shipping with the M2s, they believe that by the time the product actually comes out, they're going to say, oh, well, the M3s are actually going to be in those, in them, because by the time that it's released, they're like, oh, that's probably what we're going to see in them. But anyway, this is an article that kind of goes over some of what was announced yesterday. Some of the exciting
What's the website?
stuff.
What's the website?
This one is, I don't know, Pro Video Coalition. I think they sell like plugins and stuff. But anyway, some things here. Okay, 21 days after the Lightning was released, a USB-C enabled iPhone was on the way with ACES, Academy Color Encoding System. VITALY would know what this is. This is it's a high level color management system. Color support. It is the first mobile device to ever have it. Log capture. So let me just give it. So basically, when you capture an image, there's a way to capture in a format called log. It is the preferred format that you want to capture an image so that it has the maximum amount of flexibility when you do your color grade. This is why feature films, Hollywood films, TV shows look different than the crap that you shoot on your phones, right? Because they go through a professional color grade. And typically that log capture is the format that you want. When you look at that image, it looks very milky and very very, very bland when you first see it, but there's actually a tremendous amount of data there that's recorded. Some of it's in a sidecar file that's along with the video, and it's actually a big deal that Apple's phones can actually record that. But we'll continue with the article. Okay, so let's continue.
Well, just one point that makes it interesting for one reason, because a lot of films have something called a crash cam where they don't care, like a GoPro they used to use for crash cams.
Yeah.
Now there's actually red cameras that are pretty cheap, like $6-7 that you can use as a crash cam. So if you lose that camera, like in an actual crash
Or in an explosion,
whatever
they put them in
explosion,
buildings to
it
capture
falls
the-
off a building. So they have all these cameras that are meant to be destroyed, sort of. And a lot of, look, if you can buy a high quality, just a camera that you could get a shot for like $1,000.
Okay, so quick.
I could see that being used, but
so
once again, that's very
I
small.
just want to continue on because we are getting to the 50-minute mark. Okay, but the real news here was that it also allows log capture and external recording capabilities. So for the first time, you can plug an iPhone into a hard drive and you can actually record directly to a hard drive. This is actually huge because what this now means is that the iPhone is now an official camera platform. So like bigger than a moat, right? You have a moat where the people need to buy it for phones, but this is now opening up the iPhone to being considered an actual camera platform in the same way that like Blackmagic would release video cameras. Combined with the 4K ProRes capabilities on the phone, the 7 camera lenses in your pocket, and the ability to capture one with a USB 3 cable, the new Apple iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 15 Pro Max are hoping to be adopted by professionals and professional photographers and videographers. I must confess, I was a little excited. So the slide just say 4K. So you can record 4K 60. That's the 4K is the size of the resolution and 60 is the frame rate. And you can record 4K 60 ProRes in big, bold, the titanium letters, blah, blah, blah. So you can, here's what it says. ProRes video can be recorded directly to an external storage, enabling higher recording options up to 4K at 60p, greater flexibility on set when using iPhone as the main camera. So now Apple is making a play to have that phone be considered an actual like camera acquisition or an acquisition format, which means you can record 460 ProRes and a log color profile to an external hard drive with a phone that barely fits in your pocket, like the Apple 15. So this is
I think they're going after the bloggers and everything. There's no real filmmaker. There's no TV show that I work with which would ever use an iPhone except for a crash cam and to get extra footage.
Well,
or some
I'll tell
B-roll.
you. I mean, look, I'll tell you. I spoke to some people, some of like the heads of post-production, like for most of the production and marketing that happens, which is like, yes, for the higher end TV shows, they're going to use the Arri Alexa, they're going to use the Reds, but that's a very small,
not even higher end. They use the A7S3s, which I
but my
shot with,
point
the
is,
FS7s, cheap cameras.
But my point is that is a very small percentage of the actual production that gets done on a yearly basis. Most of these television networks now are saying, we're just going to buy 10, 15, 20 of these iPhones. And that's what they're going to use predominantly to do all of the work that they do outside of the main shoots, right? So out of like the main shoot, which is still, it's a really small subset of the actual production that takes place on a yearly basis. That is actually, that's actually huge. And they're also, real quick, let's just share this.
Carlos, if your entire bull case is the camera's good, that is huge to like 5 people.
Yeah.
That's huge
No,
to
no, no.
nobody.
It
That's huge to literally nobody. Bro.
I am interested.
I'm not
one of the
done.
5.
I'm not done, guys. All right.
Go ahead.
I'll finish the article. This is the article. Here's the other part of it. Hold on. This is another one. Additionally, of note to filmmakers, the iPhone 15 Pro will take advantage of 2 of its cameras to record spatial videos ready to play back on the Apple Vision Pro, which will be available for consumers in 2024. So with your iPhone, you're going to be able to record full VR, essentially, that you can then have somebody on the other end. So now what this tells me is you're going to have somebody, if you have a Vision Pro, and let's say I'm at a game or it's my birthday and somebody couldn't show up, somebody with a phone can hold up the phone and be able to have a person remotely with a Vision Pro on be able to be in the actual room. It's going to be you're going to be able to record 3D or not even 3D. You're going to be able to record virtual reality that can be played back somewhere else. That is actually huge as well because it's connecting and it's throwing to the a future product. That is going to open up things that's going to open up. I already know in the production and marketing space, they're going to use that. That is going to be like an entirely new way of, it's going to be a new advertising platform. It's huge. It's actually quite huge. I know several of the people in my industry on the post-production side that were incredibly excited about this. And a lot of them were like, yo, I'm buying that phone as soon as it comes out. I got a couple of Vision Pros going. A lot of them are actually saying, we're going to be first. They want to get in there and start creating content for it. And they want to create apps for it because they're like, We know that there's going to be a gold rush. There won't be as many apps available right away. It'll be the same as when the iPhone first came out and you had a fart app. The guy made millions of dollars because that's all I could do at the time.
Now
So
it'll be in
this is
3D,
actually
the fart
huge.
app.
Huh? That'll be a 3D fart app. So it's showing that I mean the abilities that what this phone can do is actually
okay. But do you think the
fucking
average
amazing.
person, Carlos, because they need to get like
So Chris, are you
hundreds of millions of
upgrading? Are you
upgrades?
upgrading your phone?
Like they need to get the average person like me to upgrade to.
They're
this.
going to get, but they're going to get the same amount of up. The point is, they're going to get the same amount of churn in the turnaround. For the people are going to upgrade that are going to upgrade. If you're on the ATT,
So I do want to point out something for real production. By the way, I do a lot of real production. If you take an iPhone and you try to rig it all out, there is things that you can try to do it and try to make it into an actual real camera. It's harder than just taking a real camera for $3,000 right now and using real lenses that help focus pullers and get real shots.
But I'm telling you,
for the crash cams. This is for the vloggers. Okay. This is for the B-roll. That's what.
Look, it's not. What I'm saying is, with the type of work you're doing, yes, it's not going to replace that. But what you're doing, the actual shooting of a television show, is a very small subset of the amount of production that happens. It's not YouTube. This is not YouTube. This is all of them saying promotion and marketing, even commercials, even commercial shoots.
Wait, so what is your point? Who's buying this because of this fancy camera?
What I'm saying is a lot of advertisers and a lot of networks are looking at this thing and they're saying
advertising agencies that have a shit ton of money are going to buy an iPhone versus a red camera.
No, I'm not saying that they're going to. What I'm saying is this is opening up. First of all, the spatial, the fact that it can shoot that quality on a small device. Yes, I do think that there's going to be a lot of production companies that typically rent cameras that will now just buy a bunch of these and have these in house. I know some VPs of some companies that go, look, we're just going to pick up 15 of these and that's going to be part of our production kit. We're just going to use those and send 10 or 15 of those things out. And they're going to be able to create more content because of the flexibility that right now, the way that they do it is they shoot everything on set and they upload it to the cloud. This is what they have. They shoot on set and they're uploading it to the cloud and there's a DIT on the other side. Now they're going to be able to record directly to
I'll give you the argument, Carlos, but I still think it's maybe a couple million people at best. I'm
telling you, it's going to be huge.
There's not that many people that work in advertising agencies for there to be that supply that you're talking about. How many people actually have these high-end advertising marketing jobs where they're the creative and they're responsible for making?
What I'm saying is that combined with the fact that this records spatial video, you wait and see. Once the Vision Pro comes out, you're going to see a bunch. Just like when stories came out.
TV.
When Snapchat came out with the stories, I mean, I was in the room with these marketing people. They're like, how do we use this as a platform to sell to people, right? And so everything became stories. Everything.
That's a social network. That's totally different than.
But it's the idea of using when the stories and the ideas of the stories came out, or even the vertical video. Nobody took any of that stuff seriously. Suddenly, that became an entirely new place where everyone flocked to. It's a separate advertising language when you do a vertical video. And then the other thing was when you started to see those things in feeds, a lot of those videos, we used to call them front loads. So you'd have a video and it would play for 3 seconds and then it would always happen with the sound off. So there were meetings about how do we capture people's attention since the sound is going to be off as they're scrolling through their social media feed, right? Yeah. And so then it became what they call dynamic text. Now you had to have dynamic text appearing on screen. All of that stuff was in response to a new platform or a new way to connect with the end user. And now it's part of the vernacular now. And those are considered separate ways of communication. Now, when you have an advertising campaign, it has to account for all of those. There's broadcast, there's square, there's vertical, then there's the stuff with the sound off, there's the dynamic texting. All of that becomes part of the way that you structure an advertising campaign. This is going to be no different. They'll be the early adopters, and I'm telling you, they're all going to jump on board on this this spatial video thing. It's going to be absolutely insane.
I actually like the spatial video thing. I just think then you have to have expensive devices for regular people, which that's gonna be a while to play out. But the thing is with productions, what they do is they usually do buy new gear. So if we're talking about that, they would have like 3 or 4 Reds, 1 or 2 Alexas, because those are the expensive cameras. Then they would have like 10, 20, like the bigger productions. They would have FS7s, and then they might get 10 iPhones or 15 iPhones. So it's part of their kit. So when I go out and shoot something, people think, oh, I have 1 camera. No, I travel with like 5 cameras. Okay. I have GoPros in the kit. I have an FS7. I have an A7S III. Sometimes I have something else. It depends what you're shooting. Or slow-mo camera.
I'll explain to you.
Hold on. I'm talking here. So it's going to be part of the kit. So I can see a world where you go with an iPhone if you need to do something else. It'll just be part of the kit in a production.
You're gonna have an iPhone 15, and you're gonna figure out a way to offer your clients ways of shooting spatial videos that they can use for promotion, marketing, or within the scene. I was like, in 2005 or 6, or whenever the first Red cameras came out, one of my buddies bought, like, he has Red camera number 5. Okay, he got like the first Red one, number 5, and he was an editor working with me at one of the television networks. He was tight with one of the guys in sports, and he was like, we should use this camera and start shooting some of the fights that we have. And so what did they do? It was incredibly difficult working with this footage in post-production, but they did it. We went and we shot this. They shot a couple of these fights, and that stuff looked so damn cinematic that when the head of the sports department saw that, he was like, we need to shoot everything this way. At the same time that the Red camera came out, Canon also came out with another camera, the 5D. And it was the first time that you could get really good quality depth of field, a full frame sensor HD, but in a $3,000 or $4,000 package. So between those two cameras, made it incredibly difficult for us to shoot, for us to work with it in post-production. But it changed the way sports was shot. Literally within 3 months after this company started putting out material that looked that way, guess what? Every other company that was shooting sports had to shoot their stuff that way, because it raised the bar. It raised the bar in terms of production, in terms of how these things are shot. Before that, everything was shot with like television cameras, 30 frames per second. It didn't look cinematic, but the stuff that we were putting out looked so much better than everything else everybody was doing. It also used like 120 frames per second slow motion. You didn't really see that. Most of it was like slow-mo cams that would maybe 60, 90 frames a second. So it changed the actual language. It changed the way that those stories were told. And what I'm saying is, if they've got this and nobody else is doing this, nobody else is going to be able to create this sort of spatial video, or find a way, because there'll be a way for you to view a spatial video in 2D, on a television screen. It's going to create an entirely new platform, an entirely new way of telling stories. And I think that's what Apple's betting on with this. And I mean, look, I can see, I could even see services like, imagine you have anything, a wedding, you have a weddings or a birth or whatever it is, a big party. You have companies that'll just go and offer these services to people. Hey, we'll come in there and we'll record videos that will allow you to basically put on a headset at some point in the future and relive the experience.
Let's get Chris's take on this.
It's going to be huge, man. This is going to be huge.
Look, this is going to be huge for a niche community of people who like taking videos and stuff like that, who use it professionally for work. Me, I'm probably going to wait 6 months and just buy a refurb 14 Pro. That's it. Like, I'm going to probably get it for
That's what I'm doing too.
Yeah, just get a really good deal. Last year's model is just as good, if not better. If you get it through Apple, they refurb everything, including the battery in it. And that's about it. Like, I don't think that the value of this to the average consumer is going to be that high. But there's one thing that I do like about this. It just means that now more people are going to be drawn into the Apple ecosystem. And that's the goal I think Apple has, because eventually they want to become more services based. The thing that did excite me more than what you guys are talking about in terms of technology improvement on the phone side was that they actually increased their storage, their cloud storage, right? Now, I know that sounds like, what is it at?
20, what is it, 10 terabytes now?
Yeah, 10 to 12 terabytes. Now,
I think it's 10.
Oh, might be money. Actually, money
might even be 10. Might even be 20 terabytes.
I'm paying $10 a month. So you're saying they doubled it? I didn't even see that.
Well, think about the size of the files you're making now, right? So
right.
For the same,
and that's the thing, that everyone is growing their number of photos, their number of videos, everything's more in high res. So that is reoccurring services revenue. So here's an example. Even if VITALY doesn't replace his phone for the next 5 years, he's paying $10 a month just for cloud storage, right? That's $120 of profit. And if you look at what the cost of storage is, the cost of storage is fucking dirt cheap.
Well, it's nothing.
Like, it's nothing. So
and
they're
dropping.
literally and dropping every year. Yeah.
Do you know what else? Do you know what else they enabled? So on your phone right now, you have standard camera mode, and then you have the portrait mode. Have you guys seen the difference between that? We're not getting too technical. If you take the portrait mode on your iPhone, it actually captures depth data. It uses the depth sensor to capture depth data, which means that afterwards, in editing the photo, you can change the depth of field of the image. So you can basically decide what was in focus and what was not. On this new phone, every image, every photo, every video that you take automatically records this depth data. So you can take this into, you can take any videos or anything shot with it into post-production and actually change the focus, change the depth of field. Essentially, it allows you to go back on set and change the way that the image was recorded. You get some of that now, even in, if you use Apple software, Final Cut Pro, and I record, say, a cinema video on my iPhone, I can actually change the depth of field and the focus. I can change the iris and the f-stop in post-production. This is typically something that is someone's job. I mean, VITALY will know there's someone on set who does a focus puller. That person's job is literally just to pull focus. You don't need to do that now. You can literally just do it all inside post-production and get the focus right every time. So the fact that they're building this stuff in, they're trying to really establish that the iPhone is not just, yes, it's going to be used for the consumer and the prosumer user, but on a professional level, they're giving you some really good professional tools now to make it something where every production and every production company would want to have one or two or three of these things in the bag for them. And in doing so, they're going to create, or they're going to be able to establish that look in the same way that the Canon 5D did, in the same way that the Red camera did, in the same way that the Arri Alexa created their own look. And once it was established in the industry, you basically, everyone had to follow suit, or your stuff just didn't look as good. So
that's a good point. If you normalize it heavy.
To Chris's point about, I actually looked it up because I was curious, but no, they're keeping the 2 terabytes, which I'm paying for $10 a month. And the 6 terabytes, now that's what they added, the 6 and the 12, they're going to $30 per month. They're just tripling the cost. If they gave even a little break, I might upgrade, but it's not even a break. And the 12 terabyte is for $60. But yeah, this kind of revenue is actually the best kind of revenue because storage is full. It's free for them.
And honestly,
storage is basically free. They have the server space anyway for the most part.
And whether or not you use the full 12 terabytes, whether or not you have files on the drive or not,
yeah,
it literally doesn't change anything for them.
Yeah.
So here's something.
This is free money. This is free money right here for them.
So here's something that's gonna blow your mind. Do you know who actually does all the cloud storage for Apple?
Is it Google?
GCP, Google.
This guy keeps finding a way to fucking stroke his thesis as many times as he can.
I know. But basically, look at this.
But Google's charging $1 for that 12 terabytes, and Apple's
and Apple's charging that shit ton.
Wait, how is Google able to? Well, how does Apple get away with that?
Because it's Apple. What do you mean?
It's Apple.
What are you talking about?
Make
it easy, man. You just click the button in your app, and you're paying $60 a month for and you're using 1 terabyte.
Google charges $2, Apple charges 10 for the same thing.
Have you ever heard of an Apple data center? Okay, just saying.
No, I haven't.
Exactly. No. So, okay, so take a look at this real quick. This is the Apple services revenue in the past decade as a percentage of their revenue. Okay, so not only has Apple's revenue skyrocketed from when they first, but services revenue is almost 20% of their company's sales right now. That in itself is a huge, huge moat for these guys. So, yes, I would say the bull case for Apple is not necessarily so much their small incremental hardware improvements, but it's more on the services side. The more market share they gain, especially around the world, the more that they can sell services to. Every time you download an app, there you go. You got Apple charging your app developer a certain percentage.
30%.
They're a fucking toll bridge, and every time someone crosses it, Apple gets paid. So that is the kind of power that Apple has in terms of earnings, So as much as as much as I like the bull case behind, hey, they made a great incremental improvement on the existing product, which is their iPhone. I think it's not an incremental improvement, is what I'm saying. This is a dog whistle to marketers, advertisers, production companies, filmmakers, that there's a new platform, a new way of telling the story. And my guess is once the Vision Pro comes out and a bunch of these advertisers get their hands on one, because they're all going to get one, they're going to figure out a way to make the coolest ads possible. And then there's going to be companies that come up to be able to create that content. It's very much in the same way, it's very much in the same way that when people saw the way that The Mandalorian was being shot, I mean, I don't know if you guys know too much. It's probably a little more than we can get into today. A bunch of companies spawned that were able to provide that service to other companies. So if you look up the way that The Mandalorian is shot, it's basically all shot on set. They use Unity 3D to create virtual backgrounds and tie a virtual camera.
They use Unreal. They use Unreal.
Unreal Engine, yes, to tie a virtual camera on in its software to a real camera on set. And there's basically a curved wall of curved screen, and anywhere that the real camera moves, a computer is moving the background on set. And so they don't need to do any green screening, nothing. There are companies now that spawned to provide that service for other people. So anytime there's a massive innovation, on the production side, or even cameras. I mean, cameras have pushed even the post-production technology, which is very resistant to change. They force them to have to upgrade those systems. Anytime that there's a leap forward in that, it opens up an entire new ecosystem, and it also opens up new avenues for advertisers to reach customers and in a different way. It's
not a bad thesis. Not a bad thesis.
Just to address one of the comments, they said that AWS is there. I thought, and this is the data that I have, that Apple right now reportedly storing over 8 million terabytes of iCloud data on Google servers. This is from 2021. I don't have any updated ones, but I know that they have a very big partnership with iCloud. So a lot of iCloud stuff is stored in.
Hey, Chris, how do we lose? We both have Amazon and Google.
I know, right? That's what
Amazon hit 52-week highs today as well.
Yeah, how
I'm
do we lose?
I'm gonna pull a Chris. I'm gonna pull a Chris, and we'll tie this back to Tesla. You want to see how I tie this back to Tesla?
Oh, no, let's not do that.
In the same way that Apple has more than enough money to build their own servers if they wanted to host their own server space, they could do it. They could just buy a building somewhere and
they don't want to. They don't
want to because Google's already got it. In the same way, this is the argument I was making the other day when you're like, AMIT, when you were like, is anyone really going to pay Tesla to use the Dojo compute? Absolutely, because they've already freaking built it. Why would they go and build it themselves if they've got 100 exaflops and they're charging you X dollars per month to just use their Dojo to train your AI when you only really want the results? You don't want to build this machine.
I don't think Amit was saying that as the bear case. I think what we were talking about is that will it be ready in 12 months? I think we're talking about timing, not that this is happening. This is obviously happening.
Oh yeah, but this should happen so damn fast, especially in this space. It's not like we're not talking about like biotech.
Well,
right?
I can't wait till I'm paying Tesla to store some cloud photos. They're gonna have that.
So, well, no, we'll have actually. Well, we should end it with.
No, you know your car monitors. Like, imagine that service. Like storing.
There's so much shit they can do in that car.
You know, the car's monitoring all the time. Imagine having a live feed through some web browser. I know you have it through the phone, but storing all of the like the actual,
the vehicle data while you're driving.
No, the video data.
Yeah, but I'm saying while you're driving, you're saying
no, even when you're parked. So like just storing it and not on the USB into the cloud, which that's worth $5.
Oh no, absolutely. I would love that. But this was something that I was bringing up with you guys the other day. Like, if a cop stops you, should they be able to have access to your video feeds?
No.
Like, this is where you start getting into the regulation, where there's things that are for convenience,
right?
And then you get into an area.
Like, I didn't put the USB in. Sorry.
Just all I know is if Apple drops below 170. Maybe to like 160s, I'll be a fucking options buyer on Apple.
There you go. Boom.
Especially their leaps. Because if just let me finish this one point, Carlos, and I'll give it back to you. They're trading right now based on the all-time highs in 2021 of December. They trade at an all-time high of 179, 180-ish intraday. So right now, technically, you're buying a company that has less shares than it did in 2021. Remember, December's right around the corner. So that's 2 years of profit that was reinvested back into those shares. So your EPS is there, right? You're getting the same price as an all-time high from 2021. Just think about that for 2 seconds, because it's trading at $174, right? Plus, their business
he was bearish on Apple, I remember.
I'm not bearish. No. I'm not bearish on Apple, the stock. I'm bearish on Apple, the company, in terms of revenue growth. But hey, look, stocks trade, right? That's the key. Like, Apple's innovation hasn't necessarily improved that much, so their revenue has flatlined. But that doesn't mean that on a trading basis, the stock is not worth investing in. It's actually cheap if you think about it from the perspective of, hey, their all-time high was 2 years ago, and they're below their 2-year all-time highs. If you had bought Apple in December of 2021, you're actually right now in a loss.
Well, actually, remember, they hit 197 last month, Chris. They did hit one.
No. I'm saying last year, like 2 years ago.
Okay. It wasn't a split, but they did a buyback, and so it reduced. It messes with the all-time high.
There's price. 2 years worth of buybacks that Apple went through. Yet, right now, if you look at their valuation, it's technically cheaper than it was when you were buying it in 2021. Right. So that's what I was saying. When someone said Apple at 130 was a good deal, bro. I agree. It's true. I mean, hindsight is 2020, right?
No,
so I hope Apple
30 wasn't hindsight.
Apple. Yeah, if Apple crashes to 160 and below, shit, dude, I'm loading up at the hell up on the calls, because I know eventually they're gonna go back up. Apple is one of those companies that
part of every pension fund in America. Everyone's 401k.
Exactly.
He's taking a call.
I
All
muted
right,
you.
all right,
I was
guys, I
about
do have to go. I gotta go eat. So it was a
Oh, I
pleasure.
got 3 super chats, so I can do them. Let me do them real quick.
Real
and then
quick.
Yep. Okay. David said, Amit, let me be the first to tell you that, sir, you do not have what it takes to join a Milli Vanilla cover band. Sorry, not sorry.
Damn, you got fired.
I got fired.
All right.
Ren says, thank you for $5, Ren. Alexa, fart 10x out loud. Okay, Alexa's out here.
Alexa, fart 10x.
Finally, Dave says, do you think Apple could create a very advanced Siri GPT like AI feature just for Apple devices? And if Netflix keeps struggling, could Apple buy Netflix? Okay, this is a rapid fire question. Could they make a Siri GPT that's better than ChatGPT? And could they buy Netflix? Vitaly, go.
Siri GPT, no, I don't think they can do it because they have the whole privacy thing. So if they're not willing to collect all the data, then they're never going to do what Google is doing or ChatGPT. And for Netflix, I mean, it'd be smart, but I don't think that will happen.
I'll answer that
Eventually-
one. I'll
Yeah,
answer
go
that
ahead,
one
sir.
here. Okay, Apple could make an AI feature because if they have the M3 chips, they can do all of that processing on the device. They don't need to send it. That's why they have to send the data, is because all the processing needs to be done where the power is. But with the M3s, they can do all that
No,
processing. on the
you have to
device.
share the data. So it's a congregation of all people's data in one place. Then
An
finding-
LLM, it has to be trained. At the end of the day.
Yeah, but
you
in
also
the
have
same
to-
in
you
the
also have
same
to actually go through the good data and actually go through
Sure,
it. The
sure,
person
but
has
in
to
the-
do
in the
that. If they're
same-
not
in the-
willing to invade your privacy,
in the
that
same-
M3 won't help us.
Jesus. In the same way that you can encrypt data end to end, it happens on WhatsApp. You can do the same thing. You can encrypt it end to end.
Eventually, they partner with Google. They use Google's Bard as a default. Let's running
probably
Siri
true.
behind the scenes.
And she has a mask on,
and
right?
pay Google very little money, and Apple instead charges you $5-10 a month to
Mhm.
use advanced Siri version and sell you on more services.
Bro,
Because that's
fuck
what
that.
fucking Apple does.
If Apple charged me $5 a month for advanced Siri, I would spit at that notification. I'd be like,
And then
"Fuck,
in
there's
terms of
no
Apple
way."
buying Netflix, no, I think Apple would probably buy Disney before they bought Netflix.
I agree with Vitaly more. I think Siri GPT is going to be tough. Tim Cook was not at the AI summit today. It's very interesting. He's one of the biggest companies in the world. He was not there. In terms of Netflix, I think if Tim Cook didn't buy Tesla, he's not going to spend $200 billion to buy Netflix. So if they
Apple doesn't buy big companies. Apple
Yeah, I
buys
know.
small companies.
There was
Apple
somebody-
buys small companies. Yeah.
When I was I posted something about that really
All right,
cringe
I'll
sort
see
of
you guys
video that they
later.
did with Mother
Bye,
Nature.
Vitaly. See ya.
Yeah, see you
Last
guys.
thing, that really cringe video that they did with Mother Nature. Did you see that skit with Olivia? I forgot her name, Olivia something. The Mother Nature skit that Apple did.
No, but I heard they had some cringe skits.
It was really cringe. They did this thing where she was like Mother Nature, and she was basically calling them out on how green the company has been. And I've actually edited those videos for different companies, and there was a couple of lines that they had in that made me feel like they are absolutely working on a car. They are absolutely working on a freaking car.
It's another discussion,
That's a whole
man.
other
If they're
discussion.
working on a
But-
car,
But in
oh,
that, someone responded on X and was like, "Oh no, they'll just buy a legacy automaker." And to Chris's point, Apple does not buy.
they don't
companies.
buy.
They don't
They
buy
buy the
companies
shit.
like that. They just put them out of business.
Man, an Apple car. They would sell a lot of those cars, in my
You know,
opinion.
Here's and I actually went back. Couch Investor responded to me, and he was like, "I don't think so. I think Apple." He's the guy. He's the one that said Apple would buy a legacy automaker. And I was saying, look for what Apple does to increase mobility on their at their campus. The campus is actually huge. Apple
Yep.
campus is actually massive, and moving people around takes a lot of time. So look at what they're doing. I believe that they would start like pilot programs, experimenting with shuttling people around at the Apple campus, and then expand that into what would eventually be a car. And it would be fully autonomous. It would not be, and it would never be a vehicle you could drive. It would be more like a service. I think Apple's car would be more like a service. I don't
It
know.
would
what
have
you
to be
think.
fully EV. No way they would attach themselves to gas and all this. You know?
Exactly. Anyway, good talking to you
Good
guys.
stuff,
I like-
man.
I like
Thank you.
yelling at- I'll see you later.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. We'll
Thanks,
see you tomorrow. Thanks, Carlos. Bye. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.